lilacs are not one of the 38 classical Bach remedies. However, any flower can be turned into an essence. And how do you know what a flower will do? Well, word of mouth, tradition, and also you can get a clue by looking, again, doctrine of signatures, but also what the herbal use of the remedy is as opposed to homeopathic. Lilacs, because of their magnificent smell, are very soothing. They remind you a lot of lavender, but whereas lavender works on the centers of the brain that have to do with tension and muscle tension and fatigue and things like that, lilac is a more subtle scent. So what it does is when the brain picks it up, it actually goes to the parts of the brain that have to do with fear. So unlike some flower remedies where you take them for long-term fear that has to do with, say you've been afraid because there's been a tragedy in the family and so on and so forth. Lilacs do the same thing but on a more subtle basis. So this is your go-to flower essence for PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, sometimes called complex post-traumatic stress syndrome. But basically when a person has undergone not a short-term shock but a long-term shock. So we're not talking about someone whose spouse died or someone that was in a car accident. There are tons of remedies for this. This is for long-term trauma. Somebody who's been in an abusive situation, someone who's been in an abusive marriage. For the classic lilacs, that's what you use these for. You can use them by drying the flowers and making a sachet and actually putting it under the person's pillow, but the flower essence is extremely useful. So,
all right.
Again, you got 3 different types of lilacs going by their color. So we're looking at the classic lilac. When someone says something is lilac color, they're usually talking about the light purple. Now again, this is a clustered type of flower, so you're not going to have them growing separately. You're going to get them in clusters. Again, because we're doing this later in May, you're going to look and make sure that you don't have brown. See the little browning on that? Because it's starting to fade away. You look and you pull. Okay? The blossoms that come away easily means that they're toward the end, and because what the plant is going to be going for is the seed pods. These are the actual seed pods that you get from a lilac, and this is what's going to happen once the flowers fall off. So you don't use the seeds, you use the flowers. So you go through, you find the best one, the one that is clear, no, or little browning. Let's see, probably this one. And you drop it in your jar. And again, because I won't be able to come back fast enough to make sure. Okay, now you notice I'm tugging on this, and it's a little bit resistance. That means that these aren't as old. Okay, so
they'll be newer.
Yeah, so they'll be newer. So we look, find one that's got less browning on it.
Right.
Drop that in. There's 2. Not that one. That one's too brown. 3. Okay, so there's our 3. And again, what we're going to do is put water in it just to keep it hydrated, and then take it back where we can turn it into a flower essence. Okay, now what we're going to do is look at 2 other types of lilacs, because those lilacs are not the classic color, which is the light purple, but the darker purple and the white. We'll talk about what that's used for in a flower essence. Flower essence for lilacs, classic lilacs, is for people who have been in abusive situations and are having flashbacks. So this is for adults and who've been in long-term abuse situations that are having mild flashbacks, meaning that they're not to the point where they lose track of time, or what they call intrusions, where a person can be just minding their own business, something will trigger a memory, and the next thing that you know, they're right back in that memory. Okay, so this is for the milder versions of PTSD.
And then we put some water in that. So we've got some water and our flower essence. There it is. And there's our lilac. So just 3 blossoms.
I'm pulling the blossom off of the tree because white lilacs go very quickly as far as going to seed. See, the seed pods are already from last year. These are the ones that are left from last year, and these are going fast. Notice the browning, and it's really easy to spot in white lilacs. So you turn them over, you look for the best flowers that are still left. It's not that if they are starting to deteriorate you can't use them, but the fresher they are, the better they are. Okay, so here's one. Here's what you use white lilacs for. White lilacs, again, PTSD, but for children. If you have children that are having nightmares or night terrors and they can't sleep at night, they're afraid of the dark, if the child has gone through some type of abuse, you again use these flowers for children. They're not strong enough to use for an adult, but they're great for kids. So that's what the flower essence for a white lilac is used for.
So white for children,
yes,
and your regular lilac for regular adults. Okay.
Now,
and
let's
then
talk about the dark lilacs. Oh, aren't these just gorgeous?
Those are beautiful.
Oh, they're so pretty. Okay, now the dark ones, complex PTSD, otherwise known as intrusive PTSD. Now, all of those that are watching, they have degrees in psychology. I know that a lot of the terms change, so please don't hold that against me, okay? I'm old school, so I'm using the older term. But let me describe what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the type of PTSD that is based upon severe trauma. Someone losing a limb, someone being in war. This is my go-to for veterans that come back with what they used to call combat PTSD. That is a situation. Here, let me explain the difference. A person who is dealing with regular abuse, although there is nothing regular about it, I understand, but they're a person who maybe married a spouse that's abusive, or they're living in a situation where they have to deal with physical and sexual abuse. Okay, that's really terrible. I'm not disparaging that or trying to lessen that, but vets have PTSD in a very interesting way. They have to go toward the source of trauma. Unlike someone who's living in a household where they may be trapped because of economic circumstances or whatever, the problem that you have with complex PTSD associated with the military is you can't run away from the trauma. You're running toward the trauma. So as the bombs are falling and people are getting shot, you're rushing right into the middle of it. So the trauma that you experience is going to be different because it's not going to be, how do I survive it? It's, I got to go in the middle of it and intervene and shoot people and save people. This can also be used for firemen or police officers because it's their job to be in the middle of trauma, and that's where things get difficult, and that's where this is a good go-to. And again, you do the same thing. You look at the flower, you make sure, see there's a little bit of brown on this one, so we're going to look carefully. And we're going to try to find, okay, that one looks good. We're going to try to find one that doesn't have brown on the back of the blossom, and that's what you're going to use for your flower essence. So
good.
Yeah.
So white for kind of mild, medium,
Children.
and children for white. The medium, your regular lilac for your regular kind of case, and then extreme cases with the dark.
Yes, and especially those cases where you cannot avoid the trauma, you must intervene in the trauma.
Okay.
Firefighters, police officers, people who are who have been involved in wars. This is my vet one. This is one I use for vets.
Good. All right. Hey, we've enjoyed being with you this morning, learned some really great herbs. Mama T is fantastic. We would like for you to subscribe, and if you can, to Red Clover Channel. You can also see our videos on redcloverherbs.com, and we would love for you to be a patron of our new Red Clover Channel. And if you would like, there's a link below that takes you there, and lots of cool extras that we'll have there that nobody else can see, and just for you. So thank you. And happy herbing.